Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about getting more into another sort of writing trick, which is not really a trick. It's sort of like an attitude, something to kind of remember while writing. And it sort of came to me. I was reading something last night. It's from a independent author. I don't remember their name, and I wouldn't want to call them out anyway, because that's not what this is about. It's just while I was reading this person's stuff, the words, remember the reader kind of just came up to me, and that sort of drove the purpose of this video today, is remember the reader. See, what it was is I was reading this person's story as a collection of short stories, and it was good in the beginning. The character was interesting. There was enough kind of suggestion of action that kind of made me wonder what was going on, what was kind of the world, and so I kind of got into it. And then after a while, it just started to fade out. And I couldn't really exactly put my finger on it until I kind of like just started to flip ahead to see it's kind of like, well, how long is this story? Do I want to keep reading it? That sort of thing is trying to see. And that's when it hit me that every paragraph was about the same length. And they're all kind of long. So every paragraph was the same length. The dialogue, what little dialogue there was buried inside these large paragraphs. And it's one of those superficial things, but just looking at the book, looking at the story, it looked like work to read it. It looked like this was going to be kind of a slog to get through. It structurally looked more like some literary classic that you have to read in high school or something. Some can't remember his name, but some Charles Dickens, some sort of Charles Dickens story or something. And so all this might sound superficial, but I think it's also really important, and it's maybe a reason why some people aren't really responding to your work. And it's because, and I got stuck on this too, so I'm not like trying to make myself sound really great or anything. Because in the beginning, when we write, we are writers. We sit down at usually a computer, probably alone, probably in a quiet space. And we have all these ideas in our head, and we're trying to get them down on page. And psychologically, it's kind of easy just to stop there. And what we do is we forget that there's a reader somewhere out there in the universe, in time and space, that's going to look at this page and is going to have to sort through all the stuff that I've put on the page. See, when you think of yourself as a writer, it becomes very easy to focus on the writing, and that's it. And so you get caught up in the grammar and the syntax. Something that your English teacher taught you, that every paragraph should have 5 sentences, should have an introductory sentence and a conclusionary, and then the body of the sentence and that sort of stuff. You want to clump ideas. I think that's probably what was going on with that writer as well, is that they wanted to clump ideas together. So I would read it, and I would see clearly places where you should just hit the return key right here. Make these 2 paragraphs. These are smaller paragraphs, and then it doesn't look like work. And again, it's one of those, it seems silly and superficial, but the first thing, it's instinctive. The very first thing that you look at when you're reading is the look of the page. How much white space is on there versus how much words are on there. There's a lot of white space. It flows faster. It feels like it's going to go faster. And you typically see this in dialogue scenes. 2 characters, multiple characters are talking, and so you just see lots of white space because you break out all of the different dialogue pieces and everything everyone says. Whereas if you're giving long descriptions of things that are happening, you expect big, large blocks of text, longer sentences, longer paragraphs, less white space. And you need both of those. This is actually an aspect of pacing your story, because if you have big, large blocks of text, that immediately tells your reader, slow down. This is going to be work. Going to take a little slower. Going to have to focus a little bit more. You're going to have to get down the weeds of what's being said. Whereas if you have a lot of short sentences, short paragraphs, quick dialogue, it kind of implies, okay, keep moving, keep going, keep going, keep going. And this is going to be a fast, easy read. And one of the reasons why I keep going back to this notion of work versus easy is if you're a genre writer, which most people are genre writers because that's most of what's being written. By genre writers, I mean you write fantasy, you write science fiction, you write mysteries, even romance, hell, westerns, horror, all that sort of stuff. If you're writing anything except nonfiction, which is a totally different animal than what I'm talking about. If you're writing nonfiction, well, actually, it's not totally different, but nothing else. But if you're writing nonfiction or literary fiction, that's its whole other thing. They have a different sort of thing. To be honest, literary fiction kind of doesn't care if it's work or not. In fact, a lot of literary writers would be rolling their eyes right now at this notion of making it easier for your reader to read stuff because they kind of don't care. Think of it sort of this sort of thing. The difference between a campy romantic comedy versus a superhero action film versus an Oscar award nominated for Best Foreign Film or something. The first two are meant to be fun. The way they're told and the way they look and all that sort of thing is going to be a little different, but they are meant to be fun. People go to see them to be entertained, and that's it. The Oscar award, Best Picture for Foreign Film or whatever the hell it is, they're not. These are artistes. They're, in a way, trying to show off. They're trying to send a message. They're trying to, appeal to the hoity-toity of society. They don't really give a damn if your average person enjoys this movie or not. In fact, they probably feel it as a badge of honor that the common man doesn't get their work, which is the reason why no one gives a shit about the Oscars anymore. But again, that's another tirade. So if you are a genre writer, you are an entertainer first. Think of yourself as a storyteller, not a writer, which is a little weird. Well, let me explain. With a writer, you get very focused on the words on the page. If you're a storyteller, you immediately have to think of who's listening, who's receiving this story. We've all been to those workshops, those classrooms, those presentations, whatever, where the person gets up on stage and he talks in a very monotone voice, and his voice does not rise or fall, and he talks at about the same pace, and he's not really holding your attention at all, and there's nothing at all that kind of implies that this is an important sentence or an unimportant sentence. He is just telling you the information because he is reading off of it. And then if you add him like reading from notes while he's doing all that as well, and you're asleep in 15 minutes because there's nothing there to really hold your attention. The information might be amazing, it might be brilliant, but you're just like, and so you don't get it. Whereas someone who's up there and animated and talking, they're talking with their hands, and they're looking around, and they're raising their voice, and they're lowering their voice, and they're kind of speeding up things, and they're kind of slowing things down because they want to make sure you can. That will hold your attention because there's always something new, and there's always something going on. And I hate to say it, we're monkeys. We like the shiny things. And if you don't give us the shiny things, we get bored, we move on. And if your page literally looks boring, we're going to move on. I hate to say it, one of the reasons why I can't remember this writer's story is because I don't like it. I didn't really care enough to look him up. If I liked this story, I'd look him up. And I've come across, some writers who I really like their stuff to where I remember their name and I track them down. I want to follow some of the more of their stuff because it's actually that good. Bad story, I just don't remember you. I don't remember the bad presentations. I remember the good presentations. And, and it's not to say that you have to adopt a particular style or not. Yesterday or the day before, I randomly came across a video. If you can find it, it's really good. But it's David Lee Roth, who was the former frontman for Van Halen. And he was telling the story about the brown M&Ms. And if you don't know the story about the brown M&M, it would be worth looking up. But, the quick and dirty is back in the 70s and the 80s, they had a writer buried in their contract that there'd be no brown M&Ms in the dressing room, and if they found any brown M&Ms, they would trash and destroy the dressing room. And David Lee Roth is telling the story about how they put that in there because so many people back then, they would just want to sign Van Halen because they knew they'd make a lot of money, and they didn't really read any of the stipulations. Well, at the time, Van Halen had like one of the largest, heaviest, most outlandish, stage productions that you could have, and a lot of these places they were playing were from the 40s or 50s or 60s. And there was concerns like, could the building actually handle the electrical load that they needed to? Could it handle the actual weight? Will the things actually fit through the doors and stuff? And so they had this writer in there to see, if someone didn't pay attention to the brown M&Ms, then what else are they not paying attention to? I've always liked that example. But the way David Lee Roth tells the story is very funny. It's very animated. He's a showman. He's a singer in the sense that that's how he shows. But the reality is he's a showman who happens to be a singer. And I guess in a way to try and change the way you think about it is think of yourself as a storyteller who happens to be a writer. You don't get in front of an audience and tell jokes, because in a way a lot of comedians are storytellers as well. They're just telling funny stories. You're not telling, you're not sitting around the campfire telling creepy, campfire stories. You're not an actor trying to, make a movie or anything else like that. You're storytelling, but yours is by putting words on a page. But you have to remember, someone's going to read that. Remember the reader. There's someone through time and space who's going to look at your page. And if what they want to do is be entertained, and what you're giving them is something very boring and very dry and at the very same pace, and it's not really going anywhere, and it just feels like it's a drudgery to even pay attention, people just won't even read it. They'll put it down. They'll just block it off. And so that's why I think really in this sense I've been talking a lot about pacing, because that's a big part of it, because that's how it looks on the page. But notice, like, I didn't talk at all about the story. I didn't talk about the plot. I didn't talk about the character development. I didn't talk about the depth of the descriptions or anything else, because I didn't get that far, because I didn't care, because it felt like work, and I was trying to get a little reading in before I went to bed last night, and that was it. It just felt like a job, and so that's one of the things that I try to remember in my writing, is what I'm trying to do is entertain someone. I want them to feel something. Bored is not a feeling that I want them to feel. That's you should try and avoid from boring your readers. But all the other feelings are pretty cool. Happy, excited, frightened, sad. Titillated if you're into erotica, whatever it is. But that requires you acknowledging that what you're trying to do is control the thoughts and emotions of someone else, another human being, in time and space. And if you're boring, if you're writing at a very slow pace, giving me large blocks of text and making it feel like work, you're not going to control my mind. I'm just going to turn to the next story and see what they can do. So anyway, kind of tell me what you think about all this. Do you have other tricks to remember the reader? I know something that some people do is that they read their own stories out loud. Someone even suggested reading their stories and recording themselves reading their stories so they can hear it back, so they can hear what it sounds like, so to speak, even though the pages aren't written. That's the one reason why I don't really like that, is because those solid blocks of text, if I read it out loud in a story, it might seem fine. It's the visual, it's how it looks on the page is a little different. But tell me what else. What other ways that you use to remember the reader? How do you feel about your pacing skills? To me, I think that's the most important skill to have. It's one I'm constantly working on and thinking about. But anyway, I will talk to you later. Bye.